Welcome to Career Pod, your Audible career fair podcast. I'm your host, Dana Francis. I really love my chat with Crystal. To me, she is the perfect example of a Jill of all trades. In this episode, we chat about carpentry and some of the requirements you need to get into that trade, but then we also speak to some things like workplace culture and diversity in the workforce. I really love Crystal's positive outlook for the future, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Today we are joined by Crystal Bowen, journeyman, carpenter, industrial scaffolder, teacher, mentor, and proud spokesman for women in the construction trades. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And the world of carpentry, there are so many avenues you can take, whether it be residential, commercial, industrial, really the possibilities are endless. Can you tell us a little bit about what attracted you to this trade?
Good question. In all honesty, carpentry was not my first choice. I started as an apprentice electrician. My grandfather was a millwright and electrician, and I just wanted to follow in his footsteps. And when I moved to a small rural Alberta community, nobody would hire me. And 3 months later, I figured I needed to spread my branches a little further, and that's how I got into carpentry. And now that I'm here, I don't think I would have changed a thing. I think I'm exactly where I need to be.
Awesome. What are your thoughts on job stability in the future for this trade? Like obviously in Alberta, we've had a little bit of a hiccup with the recession here. Are there many jobs out there right now?
Right now, if you're creative in where you look and find a job, and if you're open to trying new things, there's lots of jobs. There's lots of jobs out there. And I was fortunate in my career going through a downturn, I think it was about 2009, laid off 3 times in 1 year. And even though I had a niche, I had to branch out and be creative in what I did for a job. It gave me an opportunity to learn more too, right? I got to work in residential and learn all about cabinet making. I got to work in the commercial industry and learn all about concrete and stuff like that. So if you're open to being creative and not too narrowly focused in what you want to do, the opportunities are endless.
Also, the being open to traveling and open to, that's one thing I found with the construction trades is luckily there's a lot of camp jobs. So it's like, so long as if you have the ability to go up north or go to another province, it always seems there's opportunities, but unfortunately they're not always in one place at one time. And it just kind of seems to be the nature of the beast.
Well, exactly that. And flexibility. But, we get so comfortable with having a routine and doing what we've done that we forget about that flexibility. And so, yeah, I agree 100% with that.
If you could press a magic button and just eliminate the part of your job, the part of carpentry that you're like, I really wish I didn't have to do that. Is there any, say there's 3 things that you could eliminate. What would those be?
Mud. Definitely the mud. It feels like you have 50-pound weights on your boots sometimes. But in all seriousness, some of the expectations in terms of having brute strength and stuff like that, I'm happy to see the industry changing a little bit, that they're recognizing that we don't have to be supermen to be able to do our job properly. I mean, I heard a female operator speak at a conference once, and she raised a really good point that back in the 70s, when she wanted to become an operator, there was one part of the plant that women just could not pass the test because they couldn't physically lift these hoses. And when they changed the design of the job and they started using mechanical advantage and what have you, all of a sudden there were these amazing women operators entering the field. What they also found was that the WCB claims regarding back injuries was reduced significantly by more than 50%. So it turns out it's not that women can't do the job. It was that it was a process design issue. And so once they changed that, the whole workforce was a healthier workforce because of that. So even though we've made great strides there, I would like to see the industry take that even further. The last thing that I would really like to push a magic button on is the workplace culture, the expectation that we can all fit into one mold. We don't. We're all individuals. We all have different lifestyles, different responsibilities in our life. I'd like a little bit more flexibility and compassion in how we design our work processes and our scheduling, our expectations of what a worker can and can't do.
Yeah, there's kind of a lot of those expectations that, the 12-hour workday, it almost seems like the norm, or the 50, 60-hour work weeks. And it'd be nice to see more flexibility. Like there's all sorts of results showing that the 40-hour work week, you have less incidents at work, and it's safer and it's better for all. But at the same time, there's always this mentality in construction that, this should have been done yesterday. We need to get going.
Well, exactly. Exactly. And when you think about it too, so not only will the productivity and business overall be better, but you're going to attract a greater population of a workforce. I mean, essentially, by creating these restrictions, we limit a large portion of our population from working in such a viable career.
Mm-hmm. Can we reverse that question now? There's a lot of things you love about being a carpenter. Can you tell us about some of the things you just love, what make you smile in the morning when you go to work?
I love the feeling of being independent. I love the feeling of knowing that I've got this. I mean, I can do things and build structures and fix my house and drive down the street and see something that's semi-permanent. I mean, it's going to last 40 years. And knowing that I did that is an incredible feeling. I love the camaraderie that we build with each other in the field. I mean, I've have lifetime friends. The bonds that we experience. I mean, when you're digging in the mud, it's a crappy job, but it's the people you're with that makes it fun, right? And you build some pretty strong bonds there. I love the money, obviously. I love...
Independence is a beautiful thing. It allows you to help other people and allows you to help yourself. And it's amazing. I love it too.
It's funny you mentioned the help other people, because the number of calls I get, Crystal, I've got this little job, and they think it's maybe a 5-hour job, 4-hour job. But when you really look at it, okay, I'm going to be at your house for a week, right? But it does save a lot of money. I mean, just on my last holidays, I decided I was going to paint my kitchen. And when I started working on it, I noticed a very spongy floor and a spongy exterior wall. I pretty well had to gut my kitchen and reframe it all. But if I had to call a contractor, that probably would have cost me about $5,000. Really, it only cost me $100 in lumber, right? So it's rewarding that way. And 2, I love being outside and not being refined or restricted, I should say. I don't like being restricted to a single desk or anything. So I'm getting paid to work out. I mean, really.
And I mean, they're saying, lots of people are vitamin D deficient. We're not getting outside enough. And they're starting to show that, cancer rates are very closely tied to the being attached to a desk. Even in a lot of office atmospheres, they're realizing the benefits of, okay, we got to get our workforce up and moving every 30 minutes. Because if not, it's like not only bringing down their productivity, it's harmful to their health.
Well, exactly. I'm very fortunate in changing careers to being out in the field and now being an instructor with a desk, obviously. I'm just so lucky to have one of those stand-up desks, and I have a yoga ball for a chair, and so I'm constantly moving, and so it's helped the transition quite a bit, but even still, that fresh air, there's something to be said about that.
Education-wise, what does one need to enter this field? Like, is there certain high school, college requirements?
Not necessarily. It helps that if coming out of high school or if you're an adult learner, that your math skills and your comprehension reading skills are up to par. I would say most importantly, a desire to learn. and a desire to strive to get better at everything you do, and a desire to do research and learn about new technologies, because even once you complete your apprenticeship and you become a journeyman, technologies and building practices, it continues to change, right?
So traditionally, carpentry has been a fairly male-dominated trade. What would you tell someone that might be skeptical about hiring a woman? Because when you're hiring 100 guys, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we don't even have a women's washroom. What are we going to do?
Yeah, it's funny because I find we have misconceptions about what it means to hire a woman and all the barriers it's going to place on the employer and the supervision to manage that. It's not as hard as it seems, really. Essentially, things like washrooms and what have you, we make it work, right? If I have to drive down to Tim Hortons to use the washroom, I can hold it. I'm an adult, right? Just allow that flexibility for me to be able to do that. In terms of I've heard excuses about, how the guys are going to perceive it, and, there might be relationships and all that kind of stuff going on. Well, no, we're professionals. We show up to work to do our job, not necessarily to find a husband,
Mm-hmm.
So these are all things that they tend to build up in their mind and exaggerate and blow it out of proportion. So I tell them to take a step back and just deal with it one step at a time, right? It's all manageable.
And there's so many other industries. I mean, obviously, nursing's very female dominated, and not all of them are trying to find doctor husbands. Like, they're there because they're there to do a job. It's men and women can work together in harmony. This is not a crazy idea by any means. It works in so many other industries.
Yeah, and I bring attention to the fact that some of the best productive teams out there have a diversity of skills, And so if you look at a female construction worker as an individual, identify the skills she has, figures out what the skills the rest of your team have, and build a cohesive team, you're better off for it.
In many ways, we are shaped by the strong women in our lives. We were both at the International Women's Day March, and I remember you telling this story, and it just kind of made my heart glow about how your mom was the first woman in Alberta to be allowed into shop class. Things have changed a lot since that time. What change are you most optimistic about?
One thing that I was challenged with throughout my career, about 15 years working in male-dominated industries, is this expectation that you're too soft to be in the industry. You're not going to make it. And then when there was the expectation that you needed to put up with people being mean, and you needed to be mean to them back. And when I tried it, it just didn't resonate with me, and I felt pretty horribly about myself. And with recent attention in the media about harassment, bullying, the Me Too campaign, I'm very, very pleased with some of the recent occupational health and safety changes to acknowledge bullying and harassment as a safety hazard. It has long-term effects on people. So I think it's going to be a long journey, probably 10 years before it becomes an industry norm, that it's okay to be nice. It's okay to say please and thank you. It's okay to have feelings. But I am really looking forward to this change that I feel we're in a bit of a groundswell right now, and it's going to change.
As a child, was this kind of the future you had envisioned for yourself? Like, what did you want to be when you were a kid? Like, when I grow up, I want to be...
I wanted to be a rock star, and I'm still a basement rock star. But I had seen myself as a veterinarian or something like that. And then as I got older, I realized that I loved working with my hands, and I loved doing things that traditionally I was discouraged from doing. In high school, I wanted to be a firefighter, and I wanted to do a firefighting co-op in school, and I was strongly discouraged from that. In fact, I didn't even have an opportunity, and they stuck me in a kindergarten teaching class, and I was like, this is so far from who I am as an individual. But I held on to that dream, and I had to take a pretty roundabout way to getting into the trades and doing this type of adventurous, fulfilling work. But yeah, I made it happen one way or another. I knew that that's what I needed to do, is build things. And yeah.
Had someone tell me once, it's like I get to play with Lego when I go to work and I get to see all these beautiful structures that I made that. And her enthusiasm was like, oh, I've made the right decision. This is the work for me. That really helps solidify that. When working in the trades, it's not always an easy path to go down. There's going to be good and bad days. Is there like a mantra you live by that it helps you see through those not so awesome days?
My grandmother, my Baba, told me nothing in life comes easy. And I just hold on to that, right? I'm going to face challenges and struggles. And I always thought that, if things were like this, or if things were like that, or, the office workers, they have it so much better. And now that I am in an office setting, I've really learned that the grass is never greener. It's just a different shade. So I try to stay open-minded. And another important thing for me too is to keep your sights on your goals, right? Actually physically set goals. And you might not reach them, and that's fine. But you're one step further if you at least try to get there.
Can you speak to when you got into carpentry? Obviously, it was the more physical aspect of it. And people, I think, sometimes worry that, okay, well, hopefully there's going to be a time when in 10, 15 years it doesn't break down your body because we're putting into place preventative measures to make sure that we're never reaching that extreme. But for anyone that's maybe scared that, okay, maybe when I'm 50 or 60, my body's not going to be able to do this anymore. What are other avenues that people can take after completing a trade that are maybe not the more physical aspect of it?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is to respect your body while you're in the trades. I mean, there's all kinds of things like leverage and knee pads to cushion the impact on your knees and stuff like that. So respect your body first. But if it suits your fancy, I mean, there's all kinds of things. Like you could get into working for distributors and researching different types of products. You could get into supervision. You could project management. That's another major part of the industry. You could even get into quality control or inspection. You could get into teaching and curriculum development. The sky's the limit, really. You just be creative in where you want to go with it.
Mm-hmm. It's really nice that there's just not a linear path, that you can take so many different directions. And that's the one thing, the beauty of the trades that I don't think a lot of people appreciate. And I know me personally, growing up in high school, they didn't really sell it to us that way. It was kind of like, well, if you're not smart enough to go to college or university, maybe you should consider the trades. It wasn't a matter of, okay, you learn with your hands and this is a good thing. And, maybe you should really think of these careers because they're awesome. They pay well. And, I think your skill set, you're going to succeed in that. But instead, it was kind of like, it felt like two sides of the table. It's like, okay, well, you're either smart and you do this or you're dumb and you do this. And I'm like, no, some of the most intelligent men I've ever met in my life have been in the trades. And I'm just blown away by how they can see something and process it in their head in a way that like they got a little computer attached to their brains that I'm just in awe of some days.
I think you touched on two really important things here, is the linear path expectation and that the expectation that trades are for people that aren't smart. First, the linear path. I read an amazing book, Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. Very inspirational, but she touches on the fact that careers, doesn't matter what industry it is, they're no longer a ladder. It's like a jungle gym to get from point A to Z in terms of where you want to be when you're retired, right? So that's important, is that even universities too are starting to recognize that when you've learned throughout your career, you didn't necessarily take that linear path. You could have learned from work experience. You could have learned from self-reading even, and so they take that all into account when they process an application. So it's important to know that even if you didn't take the traditional path, there's still a future for you, and there's a lot of opportunity for you to even advance further. The second being the educational component. I mean, myself, I didn't start off as an apprentice in the construction industry. I started off with an environmental degree, and I worked in a national park at a ski resort, developing their construction planning protocol with the environment in mind, because it's a very sensitive area for vegetation and for wildlife and what have you. And it was after that I was able to become a laborer and take all of that knowledge I learned there. So it just, it's amazing that the mindset that you need to be smart to go to university, or if you're not smart, you go into the construction trades. It's amazing that people are starting to reconsider that this is a viable option for anyone.
And the money's there as well. I mean, obviously we're speaking from an Alberta perspective, but can you give us an idea of what wages might look like from, say, a first year to a journeyman with experience?
It varies from trade to trade, but as a carpenter, we'll say a journeyman residential carpenter could make about $30 an hour. In the industrial sector, the last job I had, I was making $43 an hour, right? As an apprentice, these are all regulated too by the government. So currently, a first-year apprentice would make 60% of a journeyman rate. So 60% of $30, we'll say $20 an hour on average as a first year. Mm-hmm. That's just starting out. That's entry level. A laborer could make, if you're starting that route, could make about $17 an hour. So,
and you're not burdened with the debt that comes with going to university. I mean, I think that's the scariest part when I see people that they're not sure about their career paths, but then they're kind of pressured to go to university or college, and then they come out with $60,000, $80,000 worth of debt. Do you find there's lots of people that kind of come from that background, like an education background, that they just didn't, I guess things didn't pan out for them?
I would say so. I'm one of them. Right. It wasn't until I got into the trades that I was actually able to pay off my student loan. Right. But I absolutely love our apprenticeship system, the earn as you learn kind of mentality. Right. And instead of jamming in a whole bunch of learning into solid 3 years straight or 4 years straight, you work for most of a year and you apply the skills that you've learned about, then you go to school for a couple months and you keep repeating this process. And it gives you time to really apply and really understand what you've learned in that period. And like you said, the debt isn't there.
For those out there that have been inspired by your journey and want to know more about carpentry, how can they find you online? Are you out there on the interweb at all?
I've made it a point to keep myself accessible to anyone in the public. If you want to find me, LinkedIn is probably the best place, Crystal Bowen, RSE. I also have an advocacy website. Heads up, it's very controversial. I tell the real stories about what it's really like and share those stories at carpentercrystal.com. And if you want to know me personally, Crystal Sunshine Bowen on Facebook.
You really are a ray of sunshine. Thank you so much for coming in and chatting with me today. I love this conversation. Obviously, coming from a construction trades background myself, it always warms my heart to hear these positive stories about women in the trades.
Well, Dana, thank you for generating awareness about these things. And thank you for having me here.
If you had the magical power bestowed upon you to eliminate the one thing you hate doing at work, what would it be? Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter to let us know. Just search CareerPod. If you like what you're hearing, feel free to drop us a review on iTunes. You'll pretty much be guaranteed to make our day. Thank you so much for joining us today. Till we meet again, stay passionately curious.